Erika Banks stood in the marble lobby of her own building, badge in hand, as a security contractor half her age blocked her path to the executive elevator. "This floor is for senior leadership only," he said, his voice dripping with assumption. What he didn't know was that Erika owned every floor above him. What he couldn't have predicted was her next move. A single phone call that would bring federal agents rushing through those same glass doors, badges flashing, clearing the entire building. The question that remained as sirens wailed outside was simple. How far would a woman go to reclaim what was rightfully hers? Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floor of the Pinnacle Tower as Erika Banks approached the security desk, her heels clicking with the confidence of someone who had built an empire from nothing. At 42, she possessed the kind of presence that commanded rooms before she even spoke, her dark skin glowing under the lobby's crystal chandeliers, her silver suit tailored to perfection. She carried herself with the grace of a woman who had learned to navigate boardrooms where she was often the only person who looked like her, where every word was scrutinized and every success questioned. Erika had purchased this 40-story building 3 years ago, transforming it into the headquarters of her technology conglomerate, Nexus Industries. The company she had started in her garage now employed over 12,000 people worldwide, specializing in artificial intelligence solutions for healthcare systems. Her innovations had saved countless lives, and her business acumen had made her one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Yet, as she approached the security checkpoint that morning, none of that mattered to the young man in the ill-fitting uniform who stepped into her path. "Excuse me, ma'am," the contractor said, his hand raised in a stopping gesture. His name tag read, Derek Phillips, and his eyes held the kind of casual dismissal that Erika had encountered countless times throughout her career. "This elevator is restricted to senior leadership only. You'll need to use the public elevators on the other side of the lobby." Erika paused, her eyebrows rising slightly as she processed what she had just heard. She glanced at her executive badge, then back at Derek, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I'm sorry, did you just tell me I can't use this elevator?" Derek's chest puffed out slightly, emboldened by what he perceived as authority. "That's correct. Building policy. This elevator goes directly to the executive floors, and it's reserved for C-suite personnel and authorized visitors only." The irony wasn't lost on Erika. She had implemented that very policy herself, designed to protect the privacy and security of her executive team. What Derek didn't realize was that she was standing at the very top of that hierarchy, the person for whom all these security measures existed in the first place. "I see," Erika said, her voice calm and measured. "And you are?" "Derek Phillips, security contractor with Fortress Security Solutions. I've been working this building for 3 months now, and I know the protocols inside and out." Erika nodded thoughtfully, pulling out her phone. 3 months. That's interesting. Tell me, Derek, do you recognize this badge?" She held up her executive identification, the one that bore her photograph and the title, Chief Executive Officer. Derek barely glanced at it. "Ma'am, anyone can get a fake badge made. I've seen it all before. Nice try, but you're not getting past me with some knockoff ID." The assumption hit Erika like a physical blow, though she had experienced variations of it throughout her career. The presumption that a black woman couldn't possibly belong in the highest echelons of corporate power, that her presence in executive spaces must be some kind of mistake or deception. She had faced this prejudice in venture capital meetings, at industry conferences, and apparently now in the lobby of her own building. "A fake badge," Erika repeated, her voice taking on an edge that anyone who knew her would recognize as dangerous. "That's your professional assessment? Look, lady, I don't want any trouble, but I've got a job to do, and that job is keeping unauthorized personnel away from the executive floors. So why don't you just head over to the main elevators, and can all go about our day?" Erika's phone buzzed in her hand. A text from her chief security officer, Marcus Rivera. "Morning briefing in 10. Should I send the car around?" She almost laughed at the timing. Marcus, a former FBI agent who had worked personal security for 3 presidents, was probably wondering why she was running late for their weekly security review. Instead of responding to Marcus, Erika scrolled through her contacts until she found another number. She pressed call and waited, her eyes never leaving Derek's face. "Special Agent Jennifer Walsh," came the crisp voice on the other end. "Jennifer, it's Erika Banks. I need a favor." There was a pause. "Erika? What's wrong? You sound tense." "I'm standing in the lobby of my own building, and I've just been accused of carrying a fake ID by a security contractor who apparently doesn't believe I belong here." Agent Walsh's voice hardened immediately. "Are you serious? Do you feel threatened?" "Not threatened, exactly. But I think it's time we conducted that security sweep we discussed last month, the one where we test the building's response to potential threats. You want to do it now?" "I want to do it now. And Jennifer, I want the full show. Badges, protocols, the works. Let's see how well our security systems really work when federal agents arrive unannounced. Consider it done. We'll be there in 15 minutes. Erika ended the call and slipped her phone back into her purse. Derek was watching her with growing suspicion, clearly having heard enough of the conversation to realize something was happening. "Who were you talking to?" he demanded. "A friend," Erika said simply. "Someone who can help resolve this situation. Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but if you don't move away from this elevator right now, I'm going to have to call for backup." Erika walked over to one of the lobby's elegant seating areas, a cluster of modern chairs arranged around a glass coffee table. She settled into one of them, crossing her legs and checking her watch. "By all means, call for backup. In fact, I insist on it." Derek's face reddened as he realized he was losing control of the situation. He grabbed his radio and spoke into it urgently. "This is Derek at the main lobby. I need additional security at the executive elevator. I've got a situation with an unauthorized individual who's refusing to comply with built-in protocols." Within minutes, 2 more security guards arrived, both looking harried and confused. Erika recognized them as full-time employees of her building, not contractors like Derek. She also noticed the moment of recognition that flashed across their faces when they saw her. "Ma'am," one of them said hesitantly, "is everything all right?" Before Erika could answer, Derek stepped forward. "She's trying to access the executive floors with a fake badge. I've already told her she needs to use the public elevators, but she's refusing to comply." The 2 guards exchanged glances, and Erika could see the internal conflict playing out on their faces. They knew who she was, but they also worked for the same security company as Derek, and questioning a colleague in front of a civilian would be complicated. "Perhaps we should call upstairs," one of them suggested carefully. "No need," Derek said firmly. "The protocols are clear. No unauthorized personnel on the executive floors, period." Erika checked her watch again. 12 minutes. She could hear the tension building in the lobby as other employees began to notice the commotion. Some of them recognized her and looked confused, while others simply watched with the morbid curiosity that comes with witnessing someone else's misfortune. The revolving door at the building's entrance began to turn, and Erika smiled as she saw the first figure emerge. Agent Walsh was exactly as she remembered, tall, blonde, with the kind of bearing that immediately identified her as federal law enforcement. She was followed by 3 other agents, all wearing dark suits and carrying briefcases. Derek's head snapped around as the agents approached the security desk. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice suddenly much more deferential. Agent Walsh pulled out her badge and held it up. "Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI. We're here to conduct a security sweep of this building at the request of CEO Erika Banks." Derek's face went pale. "CEO Banks? But she's—" He turned to look at Erika, who was still sitting calmly in her chair. "She's right there." "That's correct," Agent Walsh said, following his gaze. "Ms. Banks called us about a security concern. Something about unauthorized personnel impeding access to executive floors?" The 2 building security guards stepped back, clearly wanting to distance themselves from what was rapidly becoming Derek's problem. Erika stood up and walked over to the group, her expression serene. "Agent Walsh, Thank you for coming so quickly. I was just explaining to Mr. Phillips here that I needed to access the executive floors, but he seemed to have some concerns about my credentials. Agent Walsh turned to Derek, her expression neutral but her eyes hard. Is there a problem with Ms. Banks' access to her own building? Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The badge looked fake. The badge looked fake, Agent Walsh repeated slowly. You're telling me that you believe the CEO of this company was carrying fraudulent identification? I didn't know she was the CEO, Derek protested. She doesn't look like what? Agent Walsh's voice cut through his words like a blade. Derek seemed to realize he was digging himself into a deeper hole. I just didn't recognize her. Erika stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. Agent Walsh, I think we should proceed with the security sweep. Clearly there are some gaps in our protocols that need to be addressed. Absolutely. Agent Walsh turned to the other agents. Gentlemen, we need to clear the executive floors immediately. This is a security exercise, but treat it as if it were a real threat. The agents moved with practiced efficiency, spreading out across the lobby and speaking into their radios. Within moments, the building's emergency communication system crackled to life. Attention all personnel. This is a security alert. All personnel on floors 35 through 40 must evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Please use the stairwells and proceed to the lobby in an orderly fashion. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The lobby, which had been relatively quiet, suddenly filled with confused voices and the sound of elevator doors opening as people began to descend from the upper floors. Erika watched the chaos unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. She hadn't wanted to disrupt the entire building, but sometimes dramatic action was necessary to make a point. Derek stood frozen in the middle of the lobby, watching as FBI agents took control of the situation he had created. One of the building's security guards approached him, his face grave. Derek, I think you need to understand something. That woman you've been blocking? That's Erika Banks. She owns this building. She owns the company. She's been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. The color drained from Derek's face as the full magnitude of his mistake became clear. She owns the building? She owns the building, the company, and probably the security firm that employs you. You just told one of the most powerful women in the country that she couldn't access her own office. Erika was standing near the elevator bank, speaking quietly with Agent Walsh, when she noticed Derek approaching. His earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by the kind of nervous energy that comes with realizing you've made a career-ending mistake. Ms. Banks, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Erika turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You didn't know what, Derek? I didn't know you were the CEO. I assumed. You assumed what? Derek struggled to find words that wouldn't make the situation worse. I assumed you didn't belong here. The honesty of his admission hung in the air between them. Erika studied his face, seeing not malice, but the kind of unconscious bias that had been her constant companion throughout her career. It was almost more frustrating than outright hostility, because it was so pervasive, so automatic. Tell me, Derek, what made you assume I didn't belong here? Derek's eyes darted around the lobby, as if looking for an escape route. I don't know, you didn't look like what I expected. What did you expect? I expected someone who looked more like, he gestured vaguely, like someone who would be a CEO. And what does someone who would be a CEO look like? The question hung in the air, unanswered and unanswerable. Derek's silence was more eloquent than any words he could have spoken. Agent Walsh stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Ms. Banks, we've completed the initial sweep. The executive floors are clear, and we've identified several security vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. Vulnerabilities? Erika asked, though she suspected she already knew what they were. Yes. It appears that your security protocols rely heavily on visual identification rather than systematic verification. We found multiple instances where personnel were granted or denied access based on subjective judgments, rather than proper credential checks. End quote. Erika nodded, unsurprised. And your recommendations? Complete overhaul of security procedures. mandatory training for all personnel on proper identification protocols, and possibly a review of your current security contractor to ensure they're meeting your standards. Derek's face went ashen as he realized what was happening. Agent Walsh, ma'am, I can explain. No need to explain, Agent Walsh said briskly. Your actions today have been documented as part of our security assessment. Any personnel decisions will be made by Ms. Banks and her team. The elevator behind them chimed, and the doors opened to reveal Marcus Rivera, Erika's chief security officer. He was a compact man in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of alertness that comes from years of protecting high-value targets. He took in the scene quickly, his trained eyes moving from the FBI agents to Derek, to Erika. I got your message, he said to Agent Walsh. Security sweep complete? Complete and documented, Agent Walsh confirmed. We'll have a full report to you by this afternoon. Marcus turned to Erika, his expression carefully neutral. Ma'am, your 10 o'clock is waiting upstairs. Should I reschedule? No, Erika said, checking her watch. I think we can proceed. She looked at Derek one last time. Mr. Phillips, I want you to think very carefully about what happened here today. About the assumptions you made and why you made them. Derek nodded mutely, clearly still processing the magnitude of his mistake. The security sweep has revealed some significant gaps in our protocols, Erika continued. Gaps that could have serious consequences if they're not addressed immediately. She turned to Marcus. I want a complete review of all security personnel. Anyone who can't properly identify authorized personnel needs additional training. Anyone who can't overcome their biases needs to find another job. Understood, Marcus said. What about the contractor? Erika looked at Derek, who was standing with his shoulders slumped, his earlier confidence completely deflated. That's up to his supervisors, but I want it made clear that anyone who works in this building represents our company. They need to understand that discrimination and prejudice have no place here. Agent Walsh stepped forward. Ms. Banks, if you need any additional documentation for personnel actions, we have everything recorded. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your quick response. Always happy to help. Though I have to say, I'm surprised this kind of thing still happens. You shouldn't be, Erika said quietly. It happens more often than you'd think. As the FBI agents began to pack up their equipment, employees started returning to the upper floors. The lobby buzzed with conversation as people tried to understand what had just happened. Erika could see the mixture of confusion, curiosity, and recognition on their faces as they looked at her. She had built Nexus Industries to be different, to be a place where talent was recognized regardless of background, where innovation mattered more than appearances. But incidents like this reminded her that changing corporate culture was an ongoing battle, not a one-time victory. Ma'am, Marcus said quietly, you 10 o'clock is Dr. Patricia Chen from the hospital consortium. She's been waiting to discuss the new AI diagnostic system. Erika nodded, but her mind was still on the morning's events. Dr. Chen represented everything she had been working toward, a collaboration that would bring cutting-edge medical technology to underserved communities. The irony wasn't lost on her that she had been prevented from attending that meeting by someone who didn't think she belonged in the building where it was taking place. Give me 5 minutes, she said to Marcus. I need to make a call. She walked to a quiet corner of the lobby and dialed the number she hadn't used in months. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Erika? This is unexpected. Hello, David. I need to talk to you about Fortress Security Solutions. David Warren was the CEO of the company that provided security services to many of the buildings in the downtown district. He and Erika had known each other for years, had served on several nonprofit boards together, and had developed a relationship built on mutual respect and shared values. What's going on? David asked, his voice immediately concerned. One of your contractors just prevented me from accessing my own building. He accused me of carrying fake identification and refused to let me use the executive elevator. There was a long pause. Are you serious? Dead serious. I had to call in the FBI to resolve the situation. Jesus, Erika. I'm so sorry. Give me the details. Erika recounted the morning's events, watching as Derek stood uncertainly near the security desk, clearly unsure whether he should stay or leave. She kept her voice factual and calm, but she could hear David's sharp intake of breath as she described the contractor's assumptions and behavior. "This is unacceptable," David said when she finished. "Absolutely unacceptable. I'm going to personally review this contractor's file and make sure this never happens again." "David, I appreciate that, but this isn't just about one contractor. This is about the kind of training and oversight your company provides. This is about the culture you're creating." "You're right. And I want to make this right. What do you need from me?" "I need you to take a hard look at your hiring practices, your training programs, and your supervision. I need you to understand that when your people represent your company in my building, they're representing both of us." Done. I'll launch a full review this afternoon. And Erika, I'm truly sorry this happened. This isn't what we stand for. I know it's not. That's why I'm calling you directly instead of just terminating our contract. After ending the call, Erika stood for a moment in the quiet corner of the lobby, collecting her thoughts. The morning's events had been a stark reminder of the challenges she continued to face, but they had also demonstrated her power to effect change. The FBI response had been dramatic, perhaps more so than necessary, but it had sent a clear message to everyone in the building about who she was and what she wouldn't tolerate. She walked back to where Marcus was waiting, passing Derek, who was now speaking urgently into his phone, probably with his supervisor. She didn't slow down or make eye contact, but she heard enough of his conversation to understand that word of the incident was already spreading through the security company. "Ready?" Marcus asked. "Ready," Erika confirmed, stepping into the executive elevator. As the elevator rose smoothly toward the 40th floor, Erika reflected on the morning's events. She had built her company to be a place where innovation thrived, where diverse perspectives were valued, and where everyone had the opportunity to succeed. But incidents like this reminded her that creating inclusive environments required constant vigilance and occasional dramatic action. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, revealing the familiar sight of her company's headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, and the modern Dika reflected the cutting-edge nature of her business. This was her domain, the place where she had built one of the most successful technology companies in the world. Her assistant, Jennifer Kim, looked up from her desk as Erika approached. "Dr. Chen is waiting in the conference room." She seemed concerned about the commotion downstairs. "I'll explain everything to her," Erika said. "But first, I need you to schedule a meeting with the entire executive team for this afternoon. We need to discuss security protocols and company culture." "Of course. Anything else?" "Yes. I want you to draft a memo to all employees about this morning's incident. I want them to understand what happened and why it matters." Jennifer nodded, already taking notes. "Should I mention the FBI response?" "Absolutely. I want everyone to understand that discrimination and prejudice have consequences. Real consequences." Erika walked toward the conference room, her mind already shifting to the meeting with Dr. Chen. The hospital consortium represented a major opportunity for Nexus Industries, a chance to bring their AI diagnostic technology to medical centers across the country. It was exactly the kind of project that had driven her to build the company in the first place. Dr. Chen stood as Erika entered the room, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. She was a petite woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Erika, I was worried when I heard about the security situation downstairs. Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine now," Erika said, settling into her chair at the head of the conference table. "We had a security exercise that revealed some important gaps in our protocols. Nothing that can't be fixed." Dr. Chen smiled. "A security exercise that required the FBI? Sometimes you need to make a point dramatically to ensure it's understood." "I see. Well, I'm glad you're safe. Should we proceed with our meeting?" "Absolutely. I'm very excited about the potential partnership between Nexus Industries and the hospital consortium." For the next hour, Erika immersed herself in the details of the proposed collaboration. Dr. Chen's consortium represented 15 hospitals in underserved communities, places where access to cutting-edge medical technology could literally mean the difference between life and death. The AI diagnostic system that Nexus had developed could analyze medical images with unprecedented accuracy, potentially catching diseases in their early stages when treatment was most effective. The preliminary trials had been remarkable, Dr. Chen said, pulling up data on her tablet. Your system caught 3 cases of early-stage cancer that our radiologists missed. In one case, the patient was a 34-year-old mother of 2. Your technology likely saved her life. Erika felt the familiar surge of satisfaction that came with knowing her work was making a real difference. This was why she had built Nexus Industries, why she had fought through years of skepticism and discrimination to create something meaningful. That's exactly what we hope to achieve, Erika said. But I want to make sure we're doing this right. The communities your hospitals serve have often been overlooked by technology companies. I want to ensure we're creating real value, not just imposing solutions. That's why we chose to work with you, Dr. Chen said. Your company has a reputation for understanding the communities it serves. And frankly, having a CEO who has faced barriers herself brings a perspective that's invaluable. The comment might have seemed like a non sequitur, but Erika understood what Dr. Chen was really saying. The morning's incident was just the latest in a long series of challenges that had shaped her perspective and her approach to business. Every assumption she had overcome, every door she had forced open, had taught her something about the importance of creating opportunities for others. Speaking of barriers, Dr. Chen continued, I heard about what happened downstairs. I hope you don't mind me asking, but how do you handle situations like that? Erika considered the question carefully. It was one she had been asked many times over the years, usually by other women or people of color who were navigating their own challenges in corporate environments. You have to decide how much energy you want to spend on changing minds versus changing systems, she said finally. Sometimes you can do both, but it requires strategic thinking about when and how to respond. And this morning required a systematic response. One person's bias became a security vulnerability that could have had serious consequences. It needed to be addressed at the institutional level, not just the brass individual level. Ah. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. That's a perspective that would serve the medical community well. We often focus on treating individual symptoms rather than addressing systemic problems. Exactly. And that's part of what I love about this partnership. We're not just implementing technology, we're creating a model for how healthcare can be more equitable and accessible. They spent another hour discussing implementation details, training protocols, and success metrics. By the time Dr. Chen left, Erika felt energized and refocused. The morning's incident had been frustrating, but it had also reminded her of why her work mattered. Marcus appeared in the doorway as Dr. Chen was leaving. The executive team is assembled for the meeting you requested. Perfect. Let's go. The conference room was full when Erika arrived, with department heads from across the company gathered around the large table. She recognized the faces of people she had worked with for years, individuals who had helped her build Nexus Industries into the success it had become. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she began. I want to discuss this morning's incident and what it means for our company moving forward. She recounted the events in the lobby, watching as expressions of surprise and concern crossed the faces of her team. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. I can't believe that happened, said Rachel Torres, the Chief Technology Officer. In our own building. It happened because we allowed it to happen, Erika said. We created security protocols that relied on subjective judgments rather than systematic verification. We contracted with a security company that didn't properly train its personnel. We created an environment where someone could deny access to the CEO of the company based on nothing more than assumptions. End quote. What are you proposing? Asked Michael Rodriguez, the Chief Financial Officer. Complete overhaul of our security protocols. Mandatory bias training for all personnel who work in this building, whether they're employees or contractors. And most importantly, a cultural assessment to be here. Make sure we're living up to our values. That's going to be expensive, Michael observed. Discrimination is more expensive, Erika replied. It costs us talent, it costs us innovation, and it costs us our reputation. What happened this morning was a symptom of a larger problem that exists throughout our industry. We have an opportunity to lead by example. Example. The discussion that followed was intense and productive. The team identified specific action items, assigned responsibilities, and established timelines. By the end of the meeting, Erika felt confident that the morning's incident would lead to meaningful change. As the team filed out of the conference room, Marcus lingered behind. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. "Derek Phillips was terminated an hour ago. His supervisor called to inform us personally." Erika nodded, unsurprised. "And the security company? David Warren is flying in tomorrow to meet with you personally. He wants to discuss a complete restructuring of their protocols." "Good. Make sure he understands that this isn't just about one incident. This is about creating a culture where everyone feels safe and respected." "Understood. Is there anything else you need from me today?" "Actually, yes. I want you to coordinate with Jennifer Kim on the employee memo. I want to make sure we strike the right tone, something that acknowledges the seriousness of what happened without creating fear or division." "I'll take care of it." As Marcus left, Erika remained in the conference room, looking out at the city skyline. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the downtown district, and she could see people moving through the streets below, each carrying their own challenges and ambitions. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Ms. Banks, this is Derek Phillips. I wanted to apologize again for what happened this morning. I know I can't take it back, but I want you to know that I'm going to use this as a learning experience. I'm sorry for the assumptions I made, and I understand why you had to respond the way you did." Erika stared at the message for a long moment. She wasn't sure how Derek had gotten her personal number, but she appreciated the gesture. It suggested that the morning's events had genuinely affected him, that he understood the gravity of what had happened. She typed back, "Thank you for reaching out. I hope you'll take this experience and use it to grow. We all have biases we need to confront." The response came quickly. "I will. And thank you for not just firing me on the spot. You could have, and I would have deserved it." Erika put her phone away without responding. She had learned over the years that forgiveness was often more powerful than punishment, that creating opportunities for growth was more valuable than simply removing obstacles. Derek's termination had been handled by his company, not by her, and his reaching out suggested that he might actually learn from the experience. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and calls. Erika spoke with legal counsel about documenting the incident, with HR about implementing new training programs, and with the board of directors about the implications for company policy. Each conversation reinforced her conviction that the morning's events, while frustrating, had created an opportunity for meaningful change. At 6 o'clock, as the building began to empty, Erika found herself alone in her office. She had stayed late countless times over the years, but tonight felt different. Tonight, she was processing not just the business implications of the day's events, but their personal impact as well. She walked to the window and looked down at the lobby where everything had started. The security desk was still there, now staffed by a different contractor, one who had been with the building for years and knew exactly who she was. The marble floors gleamed under the artificial lighting, and the elegant seating area where she had waited for the FBI looked peaceful and inviting. It was hard to believe that just hours ago, that same space had been the site of a confrontation that had required federal intervention. The dramatic response had been necessary, but it had also been exhausting. Fighting for respect and recognition was a constant battle, one that required energy she would have preferred to spend on innovation and growth. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed Agent Walsh's number. "Jennifer, I wasn't expecting to hear from you again so soon. I wanted to follow up on this morning's incident. We've completed our report, and I thought you should know that we've identified some broader patterns that concern us." "What kind of patterns?" "This isn't the first time we've been called in to resolve discrimination issues at corporate facilities. In fact, it's becoming more common. We're seeing similar incidents across the country, situations where unconscious bias creates security vulnerabilities." Erika sat down heavily in her chair. "Are you saying this is a systemic problem?" "I'm saying that what happened to you this morning is part of a larger pattern. And frankly, most companies don't handle it as well as you did." "How do they handle it?" "Usually, they try to minimize the incident, apologize privately, and hope it goes away. You chose to make it a learning opportunity for your entire organization. It needed to be addressed systematically, not just swept under the rug. Exactly. And that's why I'm calling. We're putting together a task force to study these kinds of incidents and develop best practices for prevention. Would you be willing to participate? Erika considered the request. It would mean additional time and energy, resources that could be spent on growing her business. But it would also mean helping to prevent other people from experiencing what she had gone through. What would participation involve? Case studies, policy recommendations, training development. We want to create a model that other companies can follow. I'm interested. Send me the details. I will. And Erika, what you did today mattered. The way you handled it, the statement you made, it's going to influence how other people respond to similar situations. After ending the call, Erika remained in her office for another hour, working on the employee memo that would be distributed the next morning. She wanted to strike the right tone, to acknowledge the seriousness of what had happened, while also reinforcing the company's commitment to inclusion and respect. The final version read, "To all Nexus Industries employees, this morning, an incident occurred in our building lobby that I want to address directly. A security contractor prevented me from accessing the executive floors, claiming that my identification was fraudulent and that I didn't belong in the building's restricted areas. This incident required intervention from federal agents to resolve. I'm sharing this with you not to create alarm, but to reinforce our company's commitment to creating an environment where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. The assumptions that led to this morning's incident have no place in our workplace or our society. We will be implementing new security protocols and training programs to ensure that all personnel who work in this building understand and uphold our values. We will also be conducting a cultural assessment to identify any other areas where we need to improve. Nexus Industries was founded on the principle that innovation comes from diverse perspectives and inclusive environments. Every person who works here, regardless of their background, deserves to be treated with respect and given the opportunity to succeed. If you've experienced or witnessed discrimination or bias in our workplace, please report it immediately. We cannot address problems we don't know about. Thank you for your continued commitment to making Nexus Industries a place where everyone can thrive. Sincerely, Erika Banks, Chief Executive Officer." As she finalized the memo, Erika realized that the morning's incident had become something larger than just a personal confrontation. It had become a catalyst for change, an opportunity to address systemic problems and create a more inclusive environment for everyone. She gathered her things and headed for the elevator, the same one she had been denied access to that morning. As the doors closed and the elevator began its descent, she reflected on the day's events and their broader implications. The lobby was quiet when she reached the ground floor, with only a skeleton crew of security personnel on duty. The contractor at the desk looked up as she approached and nodded respectfully. "Good evening, Ms. Banks. Working late again?" "Just finishing up some important communications," Erika replied, appreciating the professional courtesy that had been absent that morning. As she walked through the lobby toward the exit, Erika's phone buzzed with notifications. The story had already begun to spread through social media, with employees sharing their own experiences and expressing support for her leadership. The hashtag respect in the workplace was trending locally, and she could see that the conversation was expanding beyond her company to broader discussions about discrimination in corporate environments. Outside, her driver was waiting with the car. As they pulled away from the building, Erika looked back at the Pinnacle Tower, its upper floors glowing against the evening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build the kind of company and culture she envisioned. But tonight, she felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond business metrics or financial success. The next morning arrived with an intensity that, quote, surprised even Erika. Her assistant Jennifer informed her that the company's main phone line had been flooded with calls from reporters, other CEOs, and organizations wanting to discuss the previous day's events. The employee memo had been shared widely on social media, generating both praise and criticism from various quarters. "Good morning, Ms. Banks," the lobby security guard said as she approached the desk. This time, there was no hesitation, no questioning of her credentials. Word had clearly spread throughout the building about who she was and what had happened. "Good morning, Carlos," she replied, reading his name tag. How are you today? Oh, much better than yesterday, ma'am. We all got additional training last night about proper identification procedures. I'm glad to hear it. That's exactly what we needed. The elevator ride to the executive floor gave Erika a moment to prepare for what she knew would be an intense day. David Warren from Fortress Security Solutions was scheduled to arrive at 10 o'clock, and she had back-to-back meetings with department heads about implementing the new policies they had discussed. Jennifer Kim was waiting with a steaming cup of coffee and a stack of messages when Erika reached her office. "The response has been overwhelming," she said, setting down the papers. "3 major news outlets want interviews, and you have invitations to speak at 6 different conferences. Any negative feedback?" "Some. There are people saying you overreacted, that you should have just shown your ID and moved on. But the overwhelming majority of responses have been supportive." Erika wasn't surprised by the criticism. She had learned over the years that any public stand against discrimination would attract those who preferred to minimize or ignore the problem. The important thing was that the conversation was happening, that people were being forced to confront uncomfortable truths about bias and assumptions. "What's the agenda for the David Warren meeting?" "He wants to present their new training protocols and discuss a complete overhaul of their services. He's also bringing their head of training and their diversity officer." "Good. I want to see concrete changes, not just promises." The morning passed quickly, with Erika fielding calls from board members, investors, and other executives who had heard about the incident. Most were supportive, but a few questioned whether the FBI response had been necessary. She found herself explaining repeatedly that the issue wasn't just about one contractor's mistake, but about the systemic problems that made such mistakes possible. At exactly 10 o'clock, David Warren arrived with his team. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of bearing that suggested military background. His expression was serious as he settled into the conference room chair across from Erika. "First, let me apologize again for what happened yesterday," he began. "There's no excuse for the way you were treated, and I take full responsibility for the failure of our training and oversight." "I appreciate that, David. But I'm more interested in what you're going to do to prevent it from happening again. That's why we're here." He gestured to the woman beside him. "This is Dr. Sarah Martinez, our new Chief Diversity Officer. She's developed a comprehensive training program that addresses unconscious bias, proper identification procedures, and cultural competency." Dr. Martinez was a petite woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She opened her laptop and began presenting a detailed overview of the new protocols. "We've identified several key areas where our previous training was inadequate," she explained. "The focus was primarily on technical procedures rather than the human elements of security work." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Erika asked. "It means teaching our personnel to verify credentials systematically rather than relying on assumptions. It means helping them understand the communities they serve and the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect." The presentation continued for 4 to 5 minutes, covering everything from revised hiring practices to ongoing supervision and evaluation. Erika was impressed by the thoroughness of the approach, but she also knew that real change would require sustained effort over time. "This all sounds excellent on paper," she said when Dr. Martinez finished. "But how do we know it will work in practice?" "We're implementing it gradually across all our contracts," David replied. "Starting with this building, then expanding to others. We'll have regular assessments and feedback sessions to ensure the training is effective." "And what about Derek Phillips?" David's expression grew uncomfortable. "Derek is no longer with our company, but we've also used his case as a learning opportunity for our other personnel. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from understanding what went wrong." Erika nodded, satisfied that the security company was taking the incident seriously. "I want monthly reports on the implementation of these new protocols, and I want to be personally involved in evaluating their effectiveness." "Absolutely. We're committed to making this right." After the meeting, Erika walked David and his team to the elevator. As they waited for the doors to open, he turned to her with a more personal expression. "Erika, I want you to know that what happened yesterday was a wake-up call for our entire company. We thought we were doing everything right, but we clearly weren't. Your response, as dramatic as it was, forced us to confront problems we didn't even know we had. That's exactly why it was necessary, Erika replied. Sometimes you have to make a big statement to create real change. The elevator arrived, and as David stepped inside, he added, I hope you'll consider speaking at our company-wide conference next month. Our people need to hear from you directly about what this means. Send me to Stasha. Details. I'll consider it. The rest of the day was filled with meetings, calls, and planning sessions. Erika found herself energized by the response to the incident, by the opportunity to turn a moment of personal frustration into a catalyst for broader change. She had always believed that her success carried with it a responsibility to open doors for others, and this situation had provided a powerful platform for that mission. Late in the afternoon, she received a call from Dr. Chen at the hospital consortium. I wanted to check in after yesterday's excitement, Dr. Chen said. How are you holding up? I'm doing well. Actually, I'm feeling more motivated than I have in months. Sometimes it takes a crisis to clarify what really matters. That's a healthy perspective. I also wanted to let you know that our board discussed your situation at our meeting this morning. They were impressed by how you handled it, and it reinforced their confidence in partnering with Cal, Nexus Industries. I'm glad to hear that. I was concerned it might create doubts about our company's stability. Quite the opposite. It demonstrated your leadership and your commitment to your values. Those are exactly the qualities we want in a partner. The call ended on a positive note, with Dr. Chen confirming that the hospital consortium was eager to move forward with the AI diagnostic system. It was a reminder that standing up for principles, even when it created short-term disruption, often led to stronger long-term relationships. As evening approached, Erika found herself alone in her office again, but this time her mood was different. Instead of exhaustion, she felt a sense of purpose and momentum. The incident in the lobby had been painful, but it had also created opportunities that might not have existed otherwise. Her phone buzzed with a text from Agent Walsh. Saw the news coverage. You're handling this perfectly. The task force meeting is scheduled for next week. Are you still interested in participating? Erika typed back, absolutely. This is too important to ignore. The response came quickly. Great. I think you're going to be surprised by how many similar stories we're collecting. You're not alone in this. The reminder that she wasn't alone was more powerful than Agent Walsh probably realized. Throughout her career, Erika had often felt isolated, like she was fighting battles that others couldn't see or understand. The incident in the lobby had been deeply personal, but the response had shown her that there were others who shared her experiences and her commitment to change. She spent the evening responding to emails and messages from other executives, entrepreneurs, and advocates who had reached out to share their own stories and express support. Many were women and people of color who had faced similar challenges, who understood the exhaustion that came with constantly having to prove their right to be in the rooms where decisions were made. One message particularly stood out, from a young black woman who had recently started her own technology company. Ms. Banks, I wanted to thank you for how you handled yesterday's incident. I've been in similar situations, and I usually just try to get through them quietly. Seeing you stand up publicly gives me courage to do the same. Erika typed back, never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. You have every right to be in those rooms, and the world needs what you have to offer. The exchange reminded her of why the morning's drama had been necessary. It wasn't just about her own dignity or convenience. It was about creating a world where the next generation of leaders wouldn't have to face the same barriers and assumptions. The following week brought a whirlwind of activity. The story had been picked up by national media, with several outlets running features about discrimination in corporate environments. Erika found herself at the center of a conversation that extended far beyond her own company, discussing issues of bias, inclusion, and leadership on television programs and in magazine interviews. The task force meeting with Agent Walsh was particularly enlightening. Around the table sat representatives from the FBI, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and several major corporations. The stories they shared were remarkably similar. Successful people denied access to their own workplaces, questioned about their right to be in certain spaces, forced to prove their credentials in ways that their white male counterparts never experienced. "The pattern is clear," Agent Walsh said, presenting data from dozens of similar incidents. "This isn't isolated behavior. It's systemic bias that creates real security vulnerabilities and legal liabilities for companies." "What's the solution?" asked a representative from a major bank. "Education, accountability, and systematic change," Erika replied. "You can't solve bias with a single training session or a policy memo. It requires ongoing commitment and the willingness to take dramatic action when necessary." The group spent the day developing recommendations that would eventually become a comprehensive guide for companies dealing with discrimination issues. Erika's experience was used as a case study in effective response, demonstrating how leadership could turn a crisis into an opportunity for growth. 3 months later, Erika stood in the same lobby where everything had started, but the space felt completely different. The security protocols had been completely overhauled, the training programs were in place, and the culture of the building had shifted in tangible ways. More importantly, the incident had sparked changes that extended far beyond the walls of the Pinnacle Tower. Nexus Industries had become a model for other companies seeking to address discrimination and bias. The partnership with the hospital consortium had launched successfully, bringing cutting-edge medical technology to underserved communities. And Erika herself had emerged as a leading voice in the national conversation about inclusion and equity in corporate America. "Ms. Banks?" called a voice from across the lobby. She turned to see a young black woman in a business suit approaching with a nervous smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Alicia Johnson. I just started as a junior analyst with the consulting firm on the 23rd floor." "It's nice to meet you, Alicia. How are you finding the building?" "Everyone's been very welcoming. I heard about what happened here a few months ago, and I wanted to thank you. I know it couldn't have been easy, but it made a difference for people like me." Erika smiled, remembering her own early days in corporate environments, the constant vigilance required to navigate spaces where she wasn't always welcome. "Just remember that you belong here, Alicia. You earned your place, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." "I won't. And if I ever face a situation like yours, I hope I'll have the courage to handle it the way you did." As Alicia walked toward the elevators, Erika reflected on the journey from that morning of confrontation to this moment of connection. The incident with Derek Phillips had been painful and frustrating, but it had also created ripple effects that continued to expand. The FBI sweep had been dramatic, perhaps even excessive, but it had sent a clear message that discrimination would not be tolerated. The changes implemented since then had been comprehensive and lasting. The security company had become a model for others in the industry. With their new training protocols being adopted by firms across the country, the building itself had become a more inclusive space where people of all backgrounds could work without fear of being questioned or dismissed. Most importantly, the incident had reinforced Erika's belief that leadership sometimes required taking stands that were uncomfortable or controversial. The easy path would have been to accept the security guard's apology and move on, quietly. Instead, she had chosen to make the incident a learning opportunity for her entire organization and beyond. As she headed toward the executive elevator, Erika passed the security desk where a new guard was on duty. He looked up as she approached and nodded respectfully. "Good evening, Ms. Banks. Working late again?" "Just finishing up." "Have a good night." "You too, ma'am. And thank you for everything you've done for this building." The comment surprised her. She had never expected gratitude from the security staff, but she realized that the changes had benefited everyone who worked in the building, creating a more professional and respectful environment for all. The elevator rose smoothly to the 40th floor, and Erika stepped out into the familiar space of her company's headquarters. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the city lights beginning to twinkle in the growing darkness. Somewhere out there, other people were facing their own challenges, their own moments of discrimination and bias. Some would choose to remain silent, to accept the status quo, and hope for better treatment in the future. Others would speak up, would demand change, would refuse to accept that their worth was subject to someone else's assumptions. The choice, Erika had learned, was always there. The question was whether you had the courage to make it, and whether you were willing to accept the consequences of standing up for what was right. The morning in the lobby had presented her with exactly such a choice. and she had chosen to fight back, to demand recognition, to refuse to be diminished by someone else's biases. The consequences had been more positive than she could have imagined. The FBI response had been dramatic, but it had also been effective. The changes that followed had benefited not just her, but countless others who worked in the building and beyond. The national conversation that emerged had helped other companies address their own problems with discrimination and bias. As Erika settled into her office chair and looked out at the city below, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The incident with Derek Phillips had been a reminder of how far society still had to go in addressing unconscious bias and discrimination. But it had also been a demonstration of what was possible when people were willing to stand up and demand change. The fight for equality and inclusion was far from over. There would be other Derek Phillips, other moments of casual discrimination, other situations where people would be judged by their appearance rather than their accomplishments. But there would also be other Erika Banks, other leaders willing to take dramatic action when necessary, other voices speaking up for justice and dignity. The morning's confrontation had ended with FBI agents clearing the building, but the real victory had come in the weeks and months that followed. The systematic changes, the new protocols, the cultural shift that made the building a more inclusive space for everyone. The ripple effects that extended beyond the Pinnacle Tower to influence practices and policies across the country. As she prepared to leave for the evening, Erika reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a young entrepreneur working in her garage to the CEO of a billion-dollar company, from being denied access to her own building to being recognized as a leader in the fight for corporate inclusion. The path had been challenging, marked by obstacles and setbacks, but it had also been rewarding in ways she couldn't have imagined. The incident in the lobby had been just one moment in a much larger story, but it had been a pivotal one. It had reminded her of the importance of standing up for principles, of refusing to accept treatment that diminished her dignity or worth. It had shown her that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination was not anger or resignation, but strategic action that created lasting change. As she gathered her things and headed for the elevator, Erika smiled at the memory of Derek Phillips' shocked face when he realized who she was. The young security contractor had made a mistake based on unconscious bias, but he had also inadvertently created an opportunity for growth and change. His assumption that she didn't belong had forced her to prove not just that she did belong, but that she had the power to shape the environment around her. The elevator doors opened, and Erika stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. As the elevator began its descent, she thought about the young woman she had met earlier, Alicia Johnson, who was just starting her career in corporate America. The changes that had resulted from the morning's incident would help ensure that Alicia's experience was different from her own, that the barriers and assumptions that had shaped Erika's journey would be less prevalent for the next, quote, generation. The lobby was quiet when she reached the ground floor, with only a few people still working late into the evening. The security guard nodded respectfully as she passed, and Erika felt a sense of completion. The space where everything had started now felt like a place where everyone could belong, where dignity and respect were the default rather than the exception. Outside, her driver was waiting, and as they pulled away from the building, Erika looked back at the Pinnacle Tower one more time. The upper floors were still glowing against the night sky, and she could see the lights of her company's headquarters among them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build the kind of world she envisioned. But tonight, she felt the satisfaction of knowing that she had used her power and position to create positive change, that the dramatic events of that morning had led to lasting improvements for everyone who worked in the brick and the brawn building and beyond. The story of the morning in the lobby would be remembered not for the confrontation itself, but for the changes it had inspired. The FBI response had been dramatic, but the real victory had been quieter and more lasting. The systematic changes that made discrimination less likely, the cultural shift that created more inclusive environments, the national conversation that helped other companies address their own problems with bias and prejudice. As the car moved through the city streets, Erika felt a deep sense of purpose and satisfaction. The incident had been personal, but its impact had been far broader. She had taken a moment of discrimination and turned it into a catalyst for change, proving that sometimes the most powerful response to injustice was not just to overcome it, but to ensure that others wouldn't have to face it in the future. The morning when Derek Phillips had stopped her in the lobby seemed like a lifetime ago, but its lessons remained fresh and relevant. The importance of standing up for principles, the power of strategic action, the responsibility that came with leadership and success. These were the themes that would continue to guide her work, both in building her company and in fighting for a more inclusive and equitable world. As they reached her home, Erika reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From being denied access to her own building, to becoming a national voice for corporate inclusion, from facing discrimination to creating systems that prevented it, from individual struggle to collective action. The path had been challenging, but it had also been transformative, both for her and for the countless others who would benefit from the changes she had helped to create. The story was far from over. There would be new challenges, new opportunities to fight for justice and equality, new moments when she would have to choose between the easy path and the right one. But she faced the future with confidence, knowing that she had the tools, the support, and the determination to continue making a difference. The morning in the lobby had been just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would continue to unfold in the days and years to come.